Hey everyone, and welcome to the first review for this channel. And today we're going to be going over Fantasy Island. What did you think of it? First,
First off, I also want to mention that we did not see this together. We
No.
each had our own experience during this movie.
Did you drink during yours?
No, I wish I had though.
That might have helped.
A drink would have been nice.
Well, you know what? You actually came for the review, so let's go ahead and get into the review. We'll start off with the pros, then we'll head into the cons, then we'll head into the silver lining, and then we'll pause to let you know that we're going into the spoilers, and then that'll be wrapping it up. So,
for those of you who don't know the general plot of Fantasy Island, it is basically essentially a retelling of the 1977 TV series Fantasy Island, which starred Ricardo Montalban as the Mr. Rourke character. So now this new version is basically a horror retelling of that same concept, where you go to the island and you get your fantasies fulfilled. And the thing is, with the creepiness of it, depending on the direction it goes, the fantasy has to be completed no matter what.
yeah. So, did you have any pros for this movie? Or should you want me to start with mine?
Yeah, I start.
So, pro number one for me. The length of this movie was an hour and 49 minutes. And probably I would say at about an hour and 40 minutes, I said, please, can we wrap this up? And they wrapped it up. So it was wrapped up pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and give a positive for the length of this movie. The second positive that I had was this, I think Michael Pena, Michael Pena, who played Mr. Rourke, did a really good job of trying to stretch out of his normal box of doing typically comedy, and I think in this one he only had like one joke in the entire movie. So I think he did a really good job at that. Did you have any other pros?
I guess when it came to some of the performances, I thought they were fairly decent. Like, Michael Pena was good. It's hard for me to come up with any pros for this movie, to be completely honest. I think it was a cool concept. I mean, I like the idea of taking, like, kitschy, cheesy, kind of old school type of things and kind of putting, like, a horror twist to it. I kind of appreciate the idea of it. I just don't think it was executed well in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think I heard from the TV shows that it was somewhat suspenseful from time to time, but it wasn't strictly
sometimes
horror.
Like a little.
And so I honestly think like they could have done better with the material that they had, but I think we could go ahead and head into our cons. And I know the one thing you were telling me about it is something that Blumhouse also does over on Hulu. What was your take on this movie that you thought would have worked really well over on Hulu?
So he said his pro was that he liked the length of the movie because he felt like it got wrapped up real quick. I thought it took forever. Like, honestly, like it reached a point where we had hit like the fourth, maybe fifth subplot, and I was like, oh my god, when is this ever going to end? Is this going to get resolved? Especially with the inconsistencies of the plot. The plot holes that are throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't like the plot holes.
And the fact you have to focus on at least 6-7 different characters. I think it was just way too much information put into less than a 2-hour movie.
And we could get a little more into it when we get to like the spoiler part, but
yeah.
I didn't like some of the characters. Like, the characters that they had written and the people that they had picked for them, they didn't make it believable that that was their character for some of them.
Oh, absolutely not.
And then there were times like... yeah, that it just didn't make any sense with that character being like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, I think one of the times, like, one of the characters, I think they were just like, oh, because it's PG-13 and we're going to gear this towards, like, kids or teenagers, they've got like their check marks of things that they like in horror movies, and we forgot a particular stereotype or culture, and so let's just shove that in here on this character.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of was just thrown in at the very beginning, and like, honestly, was it relevant the rest of the movie? At all?
Spoiler section.
Spoiler section? Alright. I say the only pros I will have acting wise is I do agree. I thought Michael Pena did a good job for when it came to like the writing, dealing with the writing and the dialogue.
Yeah.
He made it work. And then I've always been a fan of Maggie Q. I mean, she was Nikita on the CW show, so I like her.
The remake.
Yeah, the remake technically.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I
Well,
liked her.
Yeah, no, she was all right.
Her character was decent, and I liked the different things that she regretted, and I liked eventually what happens further in the movie where she was like, no, this is not what I wanted. But not like in the horror aspect and the fact that she didn't make the right choice on what she wanted her fantasy to be. And I liked that. It was good.
Do you have a silver lining for this movie? I do.
What's yours?
My silver lining is Blumhouse has a tendency to make a couple of good movies a year, and if they're lucky, they can make more because they have Jordan Peele doing a movie for them.
When is that?
Well, they have Us and Get Out.
Oh.
We're both Blumhouse.
They were?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's why they stick produced by the people that produce these movies, like they did on Invisible Man that we're looking forward to seeing, and Antebellum. So,
which I don't even know what the plot is for that.
No.
They're keeping that very quiet.
The silver lining for this one would be is they have a tendency to make some poor movies, but they still manage to make money, and so they're going to continue to make horror movies and make money as long as they can make some money off of it. And the thing is as long as they can bring in people like they brought in the director, his name's escaping me right now. It's
I don't know.
Well, they brought in Lucy Hale, that was in Truth or Dare, and they brought back Jeff Wadlow, that was in that movie as well, or directed that movie. And so I think they were just trying to cash in on the same theme. Okay, this is going to be like a horror movie. We're going to gear it towards teenagers, and if we're lucky, we're going to get money. So while I did not like this movie, like the 4 teenagers that were sitting like 3 rows in front of me, they actually said they enjoyed the movie. And then they also said some other things that we'll get to in the spoiler section. And hopefully they're wrong. So, so with that being said, it may not have been a movie for you. It definitely wasn't a movie for me, but teenagers
definitely was not a movie for me.
Teenagers are like don't know what good horror movies are and weren't raised on the classics. Probably aren't gonna know. They're probably gonna think this is a pretty good movie. But
no one younger than us will probably know what Fantasy Island is. At least the original.
No, they're not gonna know what the name of the. Well, that's just it though, because I know like at least where I work with teenagers, none of them knew that was a horror movie. They didn't know what Fantasy Island was. They thought they couldn't even see it because they figured by the name of it it'd be rated R. And they can't see rated R movies. Yeah.
They thought by the name they couldn't see it?
Hollywood's doing some weird... Just like The Gentleman. Like The Gentleman, not a horror movie, but The Gentleman came out. When I was in the boys' house, they're like, we don't want to see a movie about some rich British guys. And I'm like, well, it's about some rich British guys that sell drugs. And they were like, oh, well, let's go see it.
Don't young guys usually like Bond movies?
No.
No?
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
No, they have short attention spans.
Have the time
That's
changed?
why TikTok is ruling everything, pretty much. I mean, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the spoiler section. So dip out now.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's necessarily because some of the spoilers, like I wouldn't say are like the worst parts of the movie, but it's just important facts of the movie. So,
well, those plot holes, like
yes. So my big issue with this movie was the very, very severe plot holes and just inconsistencies with stuff. And I think one of the most obvious ones is the one that I noticed, and also my friend Bree noticed when we saw this movie in theaters. Was there is a moment when Lucy Hale's character is torturing her childhood bully, and a guy comes out and is prepared to start killing her.
Physics.
And essentially what she does is there's a couple different buttons that lead to like torture options. So there's an electricity one, and then there's a water like plunging down on you.
The toilet water that her character dumped on Lucy Hale's character when she was in high school.
Exactly. So essentially what she did in order to save her childhood bully was, as the man was about to cut off her finger, she essentially hit the button that caused the electricity to go into him while at the same time dropping the water on him. But the fact that we're meant to believe that you can be electrocuted while holding someone and that other person not get electrocuted even though they're both covered with water makes absolutely no sense at all.
Physics.
There's no possible way, especially if he was still holding on to her. And even if he was the only one that had the electricity actually in him, it would have spread.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a major inconsistency, and I don't know how no one noticed that in editing.
My thing is I wanted to know the devil and the skull and the pig, the guys with the masks, that apparently the two brothers were living in his house, and he came in. He didn't have the black eyes before he went in there. So this guy's already been living on the island, on Fantasy Island. Couldn't he just fantasize having another house? Couldn't he just fantasize? Why wasn't he going after Mr. Rourke? Why was Mr. Rourke just like, oh no, it's so-and-so's house? So he just let this guy live on the island? It made really very no sense to me. And then after they died, then they had the black eyes. So of course they're part of the island then. So that part didn't like really line
yeah,
up
that
with me.
didn't make sense either.
Did you have any other big things that would be spoilers? Obviously, if you've seen it, you know that the big shocker is that they try to make you believe that.
Well, here's the thing, and again, it's a plot that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because as you're going through the movie, you're kind of like, okay, so clearly they've all ended up here for some reason. Like, they were specifically chosen, so they must be connected to each other.
Yes.
You start getting that. But then as it keeps going on, and they all keep seeing kind of like the same kind of like image. Oh, hello, tomato. What happens throughout the movie is a lot of these people see these hallucinations of a guy, and he's very burnt, and you realize that all of them are kind of seeing this person, so you think, oh, they must be connected somehow. What's going on with this?
Yeah. So
this is the big kind of spoiler of the movie. Basically, essentially what happens is that they're all connected to this one guy who died in a fire.
Exactly.
A lot of them all lived in the same apartment complex. And basically, one was a police officer, and he didn't go in to save him. So basically, it's essentially like all of them could have done something to prevent the death of this guy, or they were at least a part of his story.
Yeah.
And they didn't help.
No.
Now, here is where I was just pissed off. So you go through the whole movie thinking, who could it possibly be that sent all these people to this island?
And at first, they try to make you think that it's Julia. Julia is one of the people that's on the island. They make you think, oh, that this is her son, and she must have pulled everybody here because she wants to have revenge on them, and it's actually her fantasy. But then you later find out that Julia is actually
the wife of Michael Pena.
The wife of Mr. Rourke. However, it's his assistant.
Which was also a confusing plot
Yes.
line. Like, apparently she was dying, and then the island brought her back to life, but, like, she still ends up getting sick because the island, you know, in this version, it twists your fantasies, so you can't ever be, like, truly happy.
So, anyway, we end up finding out that Julia, which I knew from the beginning, was not his mom. Instead, he was there because
of Lucy Hale, who was one of the person who was apparently sent to the island. But in reality, the whole thing was her fantasy. And she just wanted revenge for him. Now,
which I can get.
That will make sense. If you...
And then I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this must be her brother. And she's upset because all these people have done nothing to save her brother. So it's like, okay, I'm believing this. This is making sense. Okay, but instead, that's not actually what happened.
If she's putting this much effort and this much money to have these people sent to this island for her to torture, Like, you would have to think, like, he had to have been someone really important.
Fiancé,
a family member, like a brother,
husband,
married, anything. Literally anything.
Except
they went on one date.
Which they probably didn't even go on. Because from the way they made it sound is that he asked her out, she said yes, she went to the date site, and he died in a fire and never made it to the date. So we did all this entire movie, hour and 49 minutes, because this one white girl is ticked off because the one guy that asked her out on a date died in a fire, and ain't nobody stopped to help him. What the heck? What are you thinking?
And that is when I truly just got angry. that's the moment.
That was the moment that I said this better end in the next 8 minutes.
And it did.
And it did.
And it did. Like, that was the fastest.
But wait, there's more.
There's more.
Because at the very end, going back to those teenagers that said, I hope that I can't wait to see what happens next, because of course nowadays in horror movies they always got to stick it in there just in case the movie did well, which by the way it did not do well. Please, it's got a what is it on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's now at a 10%.
Right now it's at a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. So please, if you are listening, anybody out there from Blumhouse, do not do a sequel, because that's exactly what those teenagers said. I can't wait to see what happens next in the sequel, because why?
They did not actually say that.
Yes.
Oh no.
Because at the very end you have the one brother, Brax, who says he'll stay to bring his brother back to life.
Yeah.
But he has to stay on the island so his brother can leave the island. And then, cut to pan, they're like, so what should I call you? And he goes, well, I had a name in college. And he said, what was your name? And he goes, I got it tattooed on me, and it just says tattoo. Cut back to the original TV show where the dwarf that played in the movie, his name was Tattoo, and would sit there and be like, boss, de plane. Come on now.
And that's how the movie ends.
That's literally how the movie ends.
And when that moment...
You've now saved yourself an hour and 49 minutes and probably $10 on the cheap side, unless you were paying more.
Honestly, when that moment happened, when it was revealed the tattoo was called Tattoo and I knew where it was going with his nickname, I don't think I've rolled my eyes that hard at the end of a movie ever. Like, I literally leaned back and groaned. I was like...
Yeah, no, the kids, I was leading, and the teenagers in front of me were literally just like, oh my gosh, are they going to do a sequel? I want to know what happens to Tattoo and Mr. Work, because they're staying on the island.
Nope.
I hope they live happily ever after, and they don't actually ever, like, bring anyone else to that island to bore them to death, because that's really what it's going to be. It's going to be a bore to death. But if you enjoyed this movie review, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe, and should they leave comments down below?
Sure, why not?
Sounds great.
Tell me whether you liked this movie. Tell me if you like our reviews.
All right. Till next time, keep it scary.